Some people have some tight calendars today. So please note that in conjunction with Ohio State revised sunshine laws and the rule limiting the number of people who may meet in this space, CPP has decided to convene the meeting via video conferencing. In accordance with Ohio Public Records and Open Meeting Laws, CPP has advertised the meeting on its website in advance and has provided a link for members of the public to listen and view the meeting. This meeting will be videoed, recorded, and a copy of the meeting minutes, including any documentations, will be made available on the CPP website under the area Who We Are, Our Impact, meeting schedule, approve meeting minutes as soon as possible after the meeting. Okay, we got that out of the way. All right, roll call. Is our lawyer here to do our roll call?
Mike is here.
Okay, Mike, roll call.
Uh-oh, he's on
Sorry,
mute.
I was on mute. Debbie
Okay.
Alsop,
Here.
Bianca Edwards,
Here.
Terry England. I think I saw Terry.
Yeah, Terry's here. She's here.
Yeah. Christine Fisher,
Here.
Marcia Futel,
She's running a few
Did
minutes
not-
late and will be joining us soon.
Anthony Hobson.
Here.
I am here. Gary Lindgren,
He's not able to attend today.
Dr. Owens,
Present.
Cheryl Rose,
Present.
Laura Sanregret, Bishop Tate, Sally Westheimer,
Present.
Vanessa White, Dr. H. James Williams.
Do we have a quorum?
We do.
Okay. All right. I will ask for approval of the agenda with one correction. I'd like to move the finance and audit report after our executive director report. Carolyn has a hard stops, but she got so much information, we want to be sure we cover it all. Any objections
I'll
to that?
second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Fine. Agenda approved. Next will be approval of the minutes from January the 19th, 2021. Is there a motion for acceptance?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any unreadiness? Is Debbie out here? Debbie's not here? Okay, all in favor?
I'm here.
Aye. All right. All opposed? The yeas have it. Okay. All right, what's next? Okay, mission moment. Who's introducing our mission moment?
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm actually pleased to announce of one of our parents for today. It is Tiana Leary. And as you know, our mission is really to get our kids ready and prepared for kindergarten, going to the next level. But with Tiana, she actually was blessed with our opportunity to finish school as well. But I want you to be able to listen to her story and how her children are doing. They are part of CPP. Also, they attend the Little Tree House of Knowledge. One baby is already off to kindergarten, and the other baby is with Little Tree House of Knowledge. So please take a listen.
No sound.
Hello, everyone. It is Lakeisha Ely with Cincinnati Preschool Promise, the Community Engagement and Marketing Manager. And I am so excited to bring our mission moment to the community. Our mission moment actually discusses and shares information about how Cincinnati Preschool Promise is helping families, providers, and also who has a son that actually goes to Little Tree House of Knowledge right in the heart of downtown Cincinnati. And our baby is ready to go. So welcome, Miss Tiana. How are you?
Hello, I'm fine. How are you today?
I am doing absolutely awesome. So I just want to talk about just a couple, just give us, how did you hear about Cincinnati Preschool Promise? You know, how has it been beneficial? And are we meeting our standards of getting your baby ready for kindergarten? Because I know you also had another princess actually have the experience of going on to kindergarten. So I'll give the floor to you and feel free to tell how Cincinnati Preschool Promise has helped you.
Well, my name is Tiana Leary, and as you stated, I have one child right now who attends the Little Tree House of Knowledge in downtown Cincinnati. He's 4 years old, and that's how I actually heard about you all, because I was a full-time student and needed help paying with his tuition. So Miss Gina Poole, the lovely director down at the Little Tree House of Knowledge, is the one who actually introduced me to you all. And you all were able to help me financially because, like I said, I was in school full-time, you know, trying to make ends meet, and I needed full-time childcare. So she's the one who actually directed me to you all. She also helped me with my first daughter, who's 5 years old. She now goes to Cincinnati College Preparatory Academy. She also helped me with her with this same program as well. So I've known about you guys for a couple years now, and the experience has been great.
Great. So how was the transition? And we talked about your daughter now that she goes to CCPA. How it was that transition from preschool to kindergarten? How was that experience for her?
Well, it was a little bit different with COVID going on.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
So things were a little delayed, but thanks to the resources that you all have provided, the Little Treehouse, as far as learning programs and different things of that nature, she blended in perfectly.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Now for Niall, for his experience during COVID, because he was part of that generation, you know, you're going to be in preschool, you're not going to be in preschool. How was that experience, and how did CPP help? How did Little Treehouse Knowledge get you try to navigate in these uncertainty at times? How did that experience help you?
It helped with Niall because Ms. Poole said that you all were able to help her with the funding to be open during COVID. So I was still able to take my classes and things of that nature and still have childcare because you all helped her with that.
Awesome. So I just want to highlight this because I think this is even greater, because our mission is really to get kids ready for kindergarten, but also financially support. But the point that you actually pointed out was that you were able to still continue your education without a skip and a beat while your children were able to go to school during COVID. So Miss Tiana, I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with me about what Cincinnati Preschool Promise is doing for you and with your princess and prince. So hold on for 1 second and we'll go ahead and log off.
All right, thank you.
Hey, boy, I loved about that energy.
Yeah, that was nice.
Boy, you're great. You're great.
Good afternoon, and welcome to our first preschool chat. I am so very excited. I'm glad that you guys.
Okay, now we go to the executive director's report.
Thank you so much. We distributed in advance for everybody the dashboard, and I am pleased to say that we are still on track for 8 of our 9 key goals. You'll see that there are certain important trends we want to highlight. The staff support fund has significantly picked up thanks to our individual outreach, and we are much closer to that goal. If you flip to the deck, you'll also see our ambassador and community engagement. Strategic goal number 3 is the area where we were yellow. We know that we're improving in that community engagement aspect. We've gained 10 new ambassadors that we've reached out to, that we're hoping to get on board and signed up. Our outreach activities as well for the community engagement, we're launching today a new bedtime stories initiative with Cincinnati Preschool Promise. That'll be on Facebook Live on the 3rd Tuesdays at 7 o'clock. And we did a touch point for the 160 plus parents who said that they were interested in ongoing engagement, volunteering, and being spokespersons. They will all receive postcards today with a special QR code to get signed up and engage with us differently, and a monthly schedule for them to have information about promoting the Preschool Promise. You can also see we have a total for this academic year of 841 applications processed. Of those, 660 have been approved. That means our primary areas of denial for approval have been that students are too young, out of district, or too old. We only have a very small percentage, which is 6% that have applied that are not income eligible because they make 301% of FPL level or above. So I'll take a pause to see if anyone has questions about our strategic goals, our initiatives, and where we are as of March 8th.
Chara, at the 300%, what is the typical subsidy? What can you get at 300%?
Let me pull that number for you on the sliding scale.
Okay.
It depends on other sources that the family has accessible.
Okay.
So it's going to depend on whether or not they're eligible for other vouchers, subsidies, or Head Start at that 301 FPL, but I can get that exact number for you.
Just a range. I'm just curious about a range. You just give me the range. What's the upper range? The most you think you can get once you're 300%?
So Flo, I know that you're on the line and you're our specialist on that. What do you think is the upper range and the estimate for that? I see Flo is still on mute. Dr. Owens,
Here I am right here. I couldn't find my unmute button. I apologize.
Okay.
This, sometimes, you know, the computer technology, if you're not real familiar with it. So if a parent has up to 300% to 250 to 300%, the center will actually receive around $470. That's at 100%.
Okay.
That amount, meaning no other sources are involved.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
What we also wanted to highlight is that the board also asked about how we're progressing in terms of active provider sites, community provider sites. The total is 163, and as of today for this fiscal year, we have 6 permanent closures. If you'll flip to the slide, breakdown of what those permanent closures are, 4 were tuition assistance sites, 2 were quality improvement sites. Some of those have moved out of the district. Some of those are sites that have merged. We'll continue to keep a close track of this and report to you, as well as the ongoing goal to assess how many seats this equates to. That's a little bit challenging for us at sometimes, because as you know, the seat number fluctuates based on whether or not a provider is full capacity, reduced capacity for COVID, and how many seats they're devoting to preschool promise families versus other funding mechanisms and private pay. But we will continue to try to track that to get a number for you, but know that number is always going to be a snapshot in time of seat impact when we give it to you on a monthly basis. We also are focusing, as requested at the last board meeting, to say, if we know that providers may be in danger of closings, the reasons that are driving that we attempt to address those. In many cases, we've seen staffing shortages, and we've seen really helping providers focus on the business models they have, so that they have business models that are revenue generating, and that we can help with accessing resources, services, and most definitely SBA and PPP loans prior to that closure happening. In seeking support for that, we received a grant for $20,000 from the Black Giving Circle that will be focused solely on providing business supports for those family childcare providers so that we can prevent those closures. That could be anything from promotional activities to tax preparation to business model and filing, all of those things that help a family childcare business stay in business and not only be educators, but be businesses as well. We are also very, very thankful. I hope that all of you saw on March 1st that childcare providers were eligible to receive the vaccine. I have to say a special thank you to Dr. Owens for always carrying the message of how important that was, answering questions for the communities. Many of our providers have commented on how they got the information that they needed based on the webinars that you've done and direct information that Interact put out. So thank you for that. We also have to say a thank you to Commissioner Melba Moore and Commissioner Kesterman, because they really took to heart when we came to them and said, we know that eligibility is there, but how is accessibility there? They have done extra efforts to make sure that we had Saturday times for providers this last Saturday, and that we have upcoming 18th through the 20th. More accessibility, specific opportunities for childcare providers to make appointments, to make sure that they have access that works with their schedule, their time, and their availability. And I also have to say thank you to 4C for being our partners in this endeavor and an all-out push to make sure we reach every provider and that they have access to the COVID-19 vaccine. So that is our update on that. We will be pushing out while we speak the next message, because we got an update from Commissioner Moore this afternoon on how to register availability, a special link for childcare providers for upcoming vaccination sites and appointments 18th through the 20th. We are also closely monitoring what's happening with the COVID Relief Act. As many of you know, in December, additional funds were provided in a relief bill, and it was left to states to make very specific plans on what was going to happen with those dollars, many of which were allotted for childcare. The state of Ohio has made a plan that really focuses on providing provider support, which will likely be one-time grants, making sure that the reimbursement rates for providers are reaching closer to market rate based on a market rate study, that there is support for workforce and Heroes Pay Act, one-time opportunity for innovation grants, and also that they're supporting families that are receiving publicly funded childcare in terms of waiving copays and increasing eligibility amounts. So we'll be continuing to share that and monitor that, but those are the big buckets. And the exciting news is that we really think the ability for this to be spent to help childcare in the state of Ohio will be extended through fiscal year 2023. Unlike the last relief bill that had to be spent by the end of the year, there's a little bit more flexibility with this. We are also working with Groundwork in Ohio and others to make sure that we're following what's happening in the state budget in the legislature. We know that there is a push to make sure that we protect our current investments in publicly funded childcare, and that there may be an expansion of the eligibility, not huge, from 130% of FPL to 136 or 138. But the reality of what that means is that it may serve up to 2,000 more kids each year. There's also a push to make sure that Ohio's Step Up to Quality 5-star rating system is maintained. Again, we see bills popping up saying that we don't need the Step Up to Quality system, not important, too expensive. I think we all know firsthand how important that is to make sure that a high quality education is there, and that when you look at the results, what makes a difference is a high quality preschool education, not just any preschool education. We're also tracking what happened in the American Rescue Plan, which is $39.6 billion for childcare. It also gives states lots and lots of flexibility on how they may plan to use that money to invest in early childhood education. We have an idea that those funds will be used for personnel, for PPE equipment, additional supplies, goods and services, and some mental health supports for children as well as employees. I think the main thing to remember about the rescue plan is that it's really designed to provide recovery funds and to stabilize things, not to replace state funds that are already there and being invested in childcare. So I think we'll all kind of be watching to make sure that they're allocated that way, and all plans don't supplant funds that are already there, but cover for new cost, and that states continue to maintain their investments at the current level. So with that, that's kind of like the highlight of the things I had to report on you and what's been going on. I will tell you, as usual, it's an exceptional team that works with us. Every single staff member is going above and beyond to make sure that we continue on these goals, to find new collaborative partners, and to make sure that everything on that dashboard stays at least yellow, if not absolutely green. Couldn't ask
Great.
for a better team.
Questions from board members? Comments? Okay, extended learning session tuition assistant pilot.
Yep, for the second year in a row, I am presenting to the board the idea of an extended learning session that will continue tuition assistance for returning students beginning June 1st through the first day of school in August. Our goal with this pilot is really to make sure that, given all the learning loss that may have happened from interruptions, from temporary COVID closures, changes in family situations, not regular attendance, that we make sure we're giving children every opportunity for ongoing classroom instruction and stability in their preschool environment. Last year, we had probably 50% of our current enrolled students participate. This is not only Preschool Promise that is doing this, but statewide, the governor has called for a very specific plan that says, how do we make sure kids learning and education is continued, specifically looking at the early indications we had of KRA assessments. Not as many students were taking them, which we knew, and the preliminary results show not as many kids are on track in their literacy and language levels. We want to try to mitigate that as much as possible. You see, we have a strong pool of students that are eligible with 3 and 4-year-olds. Our target is to enroll between 260 and 305 students at a maximum cost of $650,000. This program would, again, as last year, be based on attendance, not enrollment. We would only do tuition reimbursement for time that children were actually in class, and that we will be coordinating our effort with CPS, sharing their curriculum as they build their state plan at the request of the governor for recovery and learning loss during the summer months. So that is my presentation to the board to ask that we can, again, for the second year, offer tuition assistance as an extended learning session.
I have a couple of questions about that. One has to do with paying on attendance and not on enrollment, which has always been very tough on providers who have to keep the lights on and the staff present, and wondered why that decision was made to not pay for the kids despite the fact that all the costs are present on those days when kids are absent.
Sure, because the session is very different during the summer months than the regular academic year. When we assessed what we really wanted to drive in the summer, it was attendance. We do a briefing session with the community providers to make sure that they're fully aware how this program looks a little bit different, and are paying on attendance rather than enrollment policy because it is for that short term, that's separate. We would never run into a situation in which somebody gave us a red flag that their attendance was so much that we would have to look at it to see if we were really investing in a child that wasn't there. Because it's a compressed time, because we've made providers aware of this, because it's something that's normally not considered in our funding cycle, we really wanted to focus on driving attendance rather than just enrollment. But we're open to ideas.
Let me just throw out a thought. This was a pilot last year. You've called it a pilot again this year. I guess if it's a pilot in that we're testing some things, I would really think we need to test that enrollment. I mean, I get from the parent's point of view, you want to put pressure on the parent to have the child attend. I just really experience is that it is the provider who suffers, not the parent, when the parent doesn't show up with the child. So anyway, keep a close eye on it, because we don't want providers to have business challenges because they accepted this pilot program.
And thank you for that, Sally. I will say that we are open to altering it to pay on, like we do in our normal year, on enrollment rather than attendance. We will find out the results of what happened last summer, but it won't be until August of this year when our year 4 evaluation, year 4 evaluation starts to come back. We do have the capacity, if you say this year, what we want to do is test the difference based on our normal practice, which is enrollment rather than attendance. We can do that, because we have last year's data for the first year of the pilot, this year's data for the second year of the pilot. We can do those two things and compare and contrast, and build in something in which innovation surveys those providers to determine the impact and the difference, if you'd like us to make that modification. I don't think it would be an impact on the budget.
It would be worthwhile, if you haven't done this already, to talk to a few providers about what that means, because the last thing we want to do is harm their bottom line, given what they've been through the last year.
Yeah, understood. And we did in comparison this, and we didn't have a strong pull one way or the other, but we may have asked at a time soon after we administered the last pilot that they may have lingering and ongoing impact that innovation is assessing now. So again, if
one suggestion, if we're going to approve this today, could we approve it as presented with your ability to modify if you think you're running into trouble on this? I mean, I don't want to be locked into that because we approved it today and then you can't be flexible during the summer. And I do, I mean, I don't know if Vera's here, but I guarantee that the teachers at CPS, the CPS program isn't doing it on attendance only.
No, we're not.
So again, we can make that modification for presentation to the board now, because I can pretty
Okay.
much assure, even with that modification, we won't exceed the maximum approved budget amount, which is
Yeah.
still within the line item budget amount for tuition assistance. So it would
Well,
not have a negative fiscal impact for us to do that.
Okay.
Yeah, and just to add to that, Sally, I do like that approach. We have the budget to do this. We have a critical need that we need to fill. And so I think offering Shara the flexibility to pivot if she needs to is a very smart idea.
Yeah, or even pivot right now and then,
Yeah.
yeah, okay.
I have a question, Shara. With the CARES Act money that's coming out, and 10% of it is going to go into a family bucket where the state would allow the parents' fees to be waived. How is that going to affect the tuition assistance to the providers? Is it going to increase it, or is it going to keep it the same since they won't have that extra money coming in? It'll be just one source.
Well, if I had to project what I thought it would be, because we're last dollar in, I'm not so sure how much it will impact how much tuition assistance we give to the providers. What I think it will impact is, in many cases, PFCC regulations require a copay. In some cases, we can't cover that copay because of the regulations. So all in all, I don't think it will influence how much Preschool Promise puts in, but I think it will allow more parents to not have to worry about that copay fee.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So that is a long way of saying, if additional dollars are put in for PFCC in other ways, then those same dollars may not be coming out of the CPP budget, which means at some point we may want to consider if we reassess what our reimbursement rate is as well. Because again, the goal with all this funding is not to supplant other dollars, but to enhance the dollar that happens. So if we win that and how related will supplant other
It's time.
dollars.
Go get your dinner.
I want to keep track of that, and we're fortunate that we're working very closely with 4C as the CCR&R to help us assess if that is actually happening with our funding scale. But we will absolutely, as that gets approved and we know what that looks like, come back to you with a report on that.
Yeah, because I know that money probably won't be available until the end of June.
Right. Right.
Any more comment? Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say we will report back, and I think Vanessa is one of our participants, our attendees listening in, and I know we have been discussing that. And I think in partnership with them, we can probably give you a snapshot of the impact of not only the family buckets, but all of those buckets may have on the tuition assistance that we do, particularly if we're reconsidering budget for the upcoming calendar year.
Okay. And I think it's always important for us to speak up, and I appreciate Sally speaking up. We always got to remember all our stockholders, and we have to look at all these things through various lenses and ensure that we don't harm our providers, and at the same time that we're being fair and try to get our parents to be more involved as well. So is there a motion for acceptance of this proposal?
Move.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
So is that
Aye.
aye? Is that
Oppose?
with enrollment, or is that with attendance? Or is it as
Attendance, but I think with modification, with the modification that Char has some flexibility.
good?
Okay. Are we clear on that?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Let me get back to my calendar. Pitch night. This is exciting. Looking
So,
forward to this.
Yes, we really wanted to share when we thought about year 4 of implementation, what can we do different? How can we really incorporate the voices of our providers and our parents of some new innovative ideas of what's really going to push the needle on kindergarten readiness, on reaching high quality for providers and really supporting our early childhood educators, as well as any COVID concerns. So the idea that we really thought through with the staff is developing a pitch night with very specific criteria, a simple application to say, what are the top 5 ideas that we can then bring to the Board of Managers for you to consider funding, that we would partner with CPP to drive some of these outcomes and address some of the challenges. So we've kind of outlined the purpose of the pitch night is, of course, to drive one of our key bodies of work. The criteria is that, anything proposed has to meet the proper public purpose of preschool expansion, has to be a simple application process, has to get started in 30 days, measurable outcomes with limited CPP staff oversight. The proposal has to bring all of the capacity, ensure that the deliverables are appropriate for public presentation and that we're able to do that. We have specific rubrics that we're going to grade on with the screening panel and the pitch panels, and that all of the CPP guidelines are met in terms of conflict of interest, our equity policy, our data sharing agreement. Our goal that you'll see on the next slide is to bring to you the top 5 proposals to the May meeting for your consideration and approval on driving new outcomes in a different way, new projects and vendors and new partners that we can work with. So we've been planning this for a while, sharing it with you to tell you, kind of laying out what we're going to do. Official announcements go live on March 27th, and pitch night will actually be 4/21. Pitch night will be Facebook Live and will allow voting by the public. The pitch panel will be comprised of 2 providers, 2 parents, and a general member of the public who will be listening to those 5-minute pitches, asking questions that have been submitted in advance, and then offering a scoring. We will then take some time as a staff to make sure that those that were scored the most high, that were scored highest, are ready and align with what we have to do to make sure it's proper public use of the funds, and bringing those back to present to you at the 18th meeting. On our internal screening panel, it will be not only staff, it will also be Jake Purcell as legal counsel to make sure that we're lined up with that, a member of 4C because they are the CCR&R and help us keep compliant as the agent of ODJFS and how we do that. And we'll also have 3 other members that are chosen at random to do the initial screening. The reason that we have a time for procurement readiness and a different kind of less traditional way of doing this is that we really, when we looked at it and said we want to put our equity lens on it, we also want to give small as well as large entities, organizations, and groups that may have an idea that's strong, that they think can deliver results, but may not have as strong as an infrastructure as the usual suspects in the big organizations, an opportunity. And we could also shore up those things to make sure they're compliant with the contracting that we have to do, and then present those 1-pagers to you. So here's a brief outline of our response to say, how can we bring new ideas and innovation? How can we make the best use of CPP resources and be fair to everyone and transparent in the process on how we initiate new projects that drive our goals and address our greatest challenges? So that's a snapshot of what's to come. We welcome feedback and ideas. We hope that you will all share the opportunity with others when we send those out, spread it far and wide to get the call to action, and are excited to have some time at the May meeting to share with you the best of the best that we got of new projects and ideas that were really endorsed and selected by the parents and providers that we serve.
Question, Dr. Owens.
Yes. Questions? Yep, go ahead.
So is there just going to be one winner, or it could be multiple, because you may have people submitting in different types of projects or opportunities?
Absolutely. So in our pilot year, we decided to, we're testing things out to see what works. What we had hoped is that we would pick the top 5 and bring the top 5 to the board for consideration. Approval of that will depend on the will of the board and the budget considerations. We didn't want to limit it in any way because we have vendors anywhere from $5,000, as you know, to $500,000. And because what we really wanted to do is generate all ideas and let it be led by the parents and the providers, we didn't want to put too many parameters on that. So in our initial year, we may get 3 great proposals, we may get 10 great proposals. Our goal is to narrow down to the top 5 and bring those to you.
And all 5 could win.
Absolutely. That would be my hope, that we have 5 great new ideas.
This is very exciting. Other questions or comments?
So,
Okay.
oh,
No, go ahead, please.
so in terms of getting the word out in the community, is it going to be media like the Cincinnati Herald, the Inquirer, all of that? Okay.
Big media push, lots of social media that we'll be doing. We'll be relying on our new ambassadors. We'll be relying on all of you to spread it far and wide. We have found our greatest touch point is social media, but I will also say we probably have 10 to 15 individual or entities who have brought ideas to us that will also be saying, this is the process for us to vet it and to look at it, right? Because we get so many ideas, so many concepts, so many inquiries that we thought it was good to be transparent about the process. So we have some people baked in that we know may be interested and have been waiting to say, how do we engage with Preschool Promise? We hope this formal process will guide them through it. But I think it is not just a local challenge, it's a national challenge, international challenge. We're prepared to open it up to anybody to say who's got the best idea that's going to drive results and what the parents and providers prefer.
Char, do you have something that we can share out to community?
We will have all of the collateral nailed down on the 26th and be ready to push.
Thank you.
Okay. As I said, this sounds very exciting. I look forward to see what the results look like. The next topic is document retention policy.
Actually, Dr. Owens, are we going to do the finance report?
I'm sorry, you're right. You're right. Financial report.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carol.
I know everyone's so excited about our financial report. So, thank you. Thanks for moving me up in the agenda.
Yes.
So we have.
It's better than document retention. It's better than document retention.
I agree.
This is true.
I agree.
That's
You do rank higher.
That's great. So 2 key items that we're going to cover today. First off are the financials and fiscal year forecast for 21. So if we could flip to the slide, we have 2 views in your packet. This is the actuals for the current fiscal year to date, but we're going to actually focus on the next slide, which includes both the actuals through the month of December and then forecast through the balance of the year. So we continue to have an estimated $2.7 million in underspend for fiscal year 21. And there are some important points of context I'd like to share. First, you'll recall that the underspend was anticipated. Remember that we did choose not to make large adjustments for the impact of COVID-19 after the budget was built. We just had no idea what we were facing, and we wanted to maintain as much flexibility as possible. So that was absolutely intentional. Secondly, except for the staff support fund, the programs are generally hitting their fiscal year 21 operational targets. And those operational targets were developed after the budget and did benefit from deeper knowledge of the impact of COVID-19. The operational results are seen in, they were seen in Shara's director's dashboard. And since our meeting, there's been a lot of work in the staff support fund area to help increase uptake there. Third, given the underspend, obviously with Shara's sharing of the pitch night concept and other initiatives, we do think that we have opportunities. So I'm actually super excited as well that we're going to do this pitch night. I think our challenge as an organization is really to be innovative in our thinking and how can we drive impact in different ways. We have budget to do that. We have some flexibility to do that right now. And so it's going to be great to see what comes out of this pitch night and what we can actually implement and have the budget to do this year is something we may not be afforded in future years. So I think that's a big deal and look forward to coming back together to make some decisions around that. Overall, we're forecasted to spend roughly about the same amount in fiscal year 21 as 20. So was about 7.2 million. And that means even with having a pandemic, we've not shrunk in a meaningful way. Obviously, we're not doing what we had set out to in our budget, but we have spent in areas that are meant to help providers and children withstand the pandemic, as well as areas that will help CPP be more in tune with needs of the children, providers, and teachers. So with that, I'm going to take a pause and see if there are any questions specifically around the current financials and forecast for the fiscal year. Silence means thumbs up, or people are on mute. Not sure which, but we'll take that as a thumbs up for now and move on to our all right, great. And then we do have an item for potential approval today. And it's related to the Ohio fiscal year 20. And actually, Dr. Owens, one thing I did not catch until I looked at it a minute ago, in the agenda, it says fiscal year 21 draft 990, and it's actually fiscal year 20. I don't know if we need to clarify that, but this is regarding fiscal year 20, obviously. So we have the 990 and then the Ohio Attorney General not-for-profit form. Both reports are in your packet and have been shared with you in advance. The reports are prepared after the audit is completed, and you'll recall that in January we did review and approve the audit for the year. I will say in lieu of our Finance and Audit Committee for March, all we had was a document review on the agenda. So we did share this information out with the Finance and Audit Committee, did ask for feedback and suggested changes. If at all, we received none. So we are asking today for review, any feedback and approval that we'd like to do for these two forms. And with that, we'll be open to any questions, hoping that everyone's had a chance to review it. I don't know that you want me to go through the 990 in grave detail, but you'll recall over the past several years, we've really worked to try to make sure that that report is as transparent as possible and disclose as much as possible. So it is an extensive report. And with that, I'll entertain any questions or suggestions for things that needed to be added or amended. Dr. Owens, you're on mute.
Shara, do you know if we had any inquiries about our last year's 990 from 19? From 19. Okay, great. Okay, that helps. Any questions about this one?
And this is posted on our website. Cheryl?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
It will be, I'm sorry, it will be, once it's approved.
I don't have any questions, just a comment. Thank you for being so detailed. I've never seen one quite that long before.
Hey, that's the result of the Board of Managers' feedback over the years.
Went on for pages and pages. I'm like, oh my God. So thank you for your hard work. I appreciate it.
Oh, thanks to
I
Hector and team.
also want to thank Hector for including on Schedule I all of the providers and the amount of funding that they receive. This is very transparent. That was a suggestion that was made last year and has been carried forward this year. So that's a lot of additional detail work, but I think very important from a transparency and a disclosure standpoint.
Thank you, Ms. Alsop.
Dr. Rhodes, if we have no suggestions for changes, we'd welcome a motion to accept and approve both of these documents.
Is there a motion?
So moved. This is Deborah.
Is there a second?
Sally will second.
Sally will second. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? It's passed. Thank you.
Yes. All right, that's all I have for today. Now we get to go to document retention.
Oh, this is riveting. We're ready for this. All right, document retention policy.
So this is the, Jake is here too. This is the second read for document retention. It's a pretty straightforward policy. We didn't get any feedback or recommendations for changes. Did the first read at the January meeting, second read, so it is ready for adoption as presented.
So we only need 2 reads?
Correct.
Okay. Board of Health used to have 3. Okay. Any comments or questions on the document? Hearing none, hearing none, then we're ready for a vote, and I will accept a motion to accept.
So moved.
Second, is there a second?
Second, Tony.
Tony, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Oppose? Motion is passed. Thank you. All right, tuition assistant age eligibility. Very interesting topic,
Yes.
because I got a phone call from a parent that was somewhat irate or confused, and this is has helped us to explain to this parent their options.
I will turn it over to Jake Purcell to share the outcome of this memo. And Dr. Owens, I am pleased to say that parent has received an acceptance letter and is currently enrolled and moving forward. So.
Great. Love when a plan comes together. Thank you.
So this memorandum that's in front of you here, this is a response to some questions that were raised at the last couple of meetings about age eligibility for tuition assistance. To Dr. Owens's point, this is something that obviously parents care a lot about. I'm going through it right now with my own daughter, so it's something that is both a little bit confusing to somebody that doesn't spend their time studying this, and also frustrating at the same time. I'll go over kind of the rules, the state of play, and then some recommended action items that we'll take after this, and I'll open it up for questions. I'll only take up about 5 minutes of your time, but do feel free to interrupt me, because I'll kind of go through it a little bit quickly. So if you need me to back up and pause, then I will. The short answer is age eligibility criteria set forth in the master agreement for preschool expansion. And specifically, the master agreement defines a preschool student as a child between the ages of 3 and 5 years old that is not eligible for kindergarten. Now, on its face, that seems kind of easy to follow. You can either be too young or you can be too old. With respect to that second category, being eligible for kindergarten, Ohio, like many other states, has a statute that defines what they call the compulsory age. That is the age at which a child either is required to attend kindergarten or is permitted to attend kindergarten. Ohio allows school districts to choose between August 1st or September 30th. So you may have heard that and had some confusion, but that is up to the school district, and CPS has specifically chosen September 30th as that date. In other words, if a child turns 5 years old on or before that date, the child is eligible to attend kindergarten and therefore is generally ineligible to receive tuition assistance funding. And keeping in mind too, that the idea of Preschool Promise and kind of the entire goal behind it is to get children kindergarten ready. There are of course exceptions to that. There are some children that are held back for certain reasons. There are children that just barely missed that cutoff. And we can talk about those in a minute. But part of the questions weren't just what is the age eligibility for children to receive these funds, but also what is our ability to expand that criteria. And as you'll see with that kind of statute that defines what the compulsory age for children is, a lot of this, even though we see it in the master agreement, is really tied into different statutes to which CPS is bound. And so the difficulty with us expanding that criteria is that we would inadvertently, or could inadvertently, put our partner CPS in some hot water, right? By virtue of us signing the master agreement, we agreed to be the clearinghouse of funds for public dollars to expand preschool. Cincinnati Public School District is bound to all kinds of statutes, things that school districts are bound to, dealing with public money, dealing with preschool, all of those things. They wanted to make sure that CPP also complied with those so that they were being good stewards of taxpayer dollars, paying attention to proper public purpose concerns, all of those typical things. And so in the master agreement, you'll see various references to statutes that we have contractually agreed to follow. So not only are we kind of contractually obligated to do so, but also we wouldn't want to do anything unilaterally without checking in with CPS that puts CPS in hot water. So that is the state of play on the criteria. And then the recommendation would be to avoid inadvertently getting CPS caught up in a sticky situation. We should really just communicate with CPS what we're trying to do, which is really dealing with those children that are just barely too young or just barely too old, or were otherwise held back in preschool for the betterment of the development of the child, et cetera, right? There's all kinds of fringe considerations that we're really addressing here. So my recommendation would be similar to how we did, say, the shared vision resolution, similar to how we'll do the master agreement discussions, that we create an implementation committee of key staff members between Cincinnati Preschool Promise, Cincinnati Public Schools, and we talk with them in an open dialogue that kind of says, hey, how can we do this that will allow you to still be in compliance with all the things that you need to make sure you're in compliance with. The final consideration to this age eligibility, you'll hear a lot of references to this 2 years of quality preschool education. As has been kind of stated by multiple board members and people in the community, that came originally from the RAND study, and there were some discussions about it when the master agreement was being drafted and created. You'll see 2 references to it in the recitals. It's not incredibly well defined in the master agreement. We've done some digging to see if there's any kind of statutory guidelines behind that, and it doesn't appear to be. This is more of one of those things of kind of how the structure was intended to be. So that's more of a spirit of the law rather than an obligation. But of course, that is kind of the pseudo requirement that we'll call it right now. But we're again going to check in with CPS and see if, how they're interpreting that, just to be a good partner. I'll pause there. Those are the rules. Those are the recommended action items. That was a lot all at one time. Does anybody have any questions?
I don't have questions, but I do have, well, I guess it's a form of a question. Some thoughts on this. Is that where you want to be, Shara, now? Okay. Jake just described it as a little too old or a little too young, for instance, but it presumes that it's a school year, so that children start in August or September and they finish in May or June. But in fact, when a parent gets a job in January, or a child turns 3 in January or February or March, they are not so they're 3 years old in February, and the next year, and then the year after that, we have to drop them, even though they're not starting school until August. They're no longer eligible for March, April, and May, or whatever the school year is. So because we're basing our community-based program on childcare needs of the family, in addition to just preschool needs, it presents a giant problem, in my opinion, of cutting kids off midstream or mid-school year, even because their 2 years is up. So that's the piece of it, that because the community providers are not typical school year operations, I would really like to find a way to address that and not have this 2 year when we need a couple more months, maybe as much as 6 months more for a child.
Right, and you're referencing
Yes,
there,
I-
just so I follow, you're referencing that 2 year of quality preschool, et cetera.
Yes, the 2
and-
years, which doesn't work for community.
It's frustrating for a few reasons too, and I'll second your frustration. Even in the master agreement, and this may be me being a lawyer here, but the word year, that could be a calendar year, that could be a school year, that could be a 12-month trailing period, and so it is not incredibly well defined, and that is one of the things that we're going to be tasked with tackling in this implementation committee.
We've had a great experience in our CPP partnership in sort of agreeing that there are things in the master agreement that don't apply to community programs, and we've reached agreement. And so I'm not just pushing for a little more here or a little more there because of birthdays, but really address the difference in community versus school year operations.
And I agree with you, Sally. I think my frustration comes from that school year versus calendar year, and whether a child turns 3 on October 2nd as opposed to September 30th, and then they're out, or if they come from a provider that has a partnership with Head Start as well, and that child is coming out of the early childhood program, and the parent is thinking, oh, okay, well, I'm going to get some help with Cincinnati Preschool Promise. And because we have not been in the situation that we're in now with COVID-19 and trying to make sure that we fill those seats, it has limited the providers in filling those seats because of those birthdays. And if we want to make sure that we're helping not only the families, the providers, and the children, we have to look at this differently now because we're in a different situation. So I'm really, I'm happy to hear that we're going to have some discussion, Jake, and and I really appreciate you looking into this, and Shara, because that was really a bone of contention with me.
I think we have done our due diligence to give, and thank you, Vera, for helping us navigate and talk to, I've talked to both Vera and Superintendent Mitchell to let them know that this is a topic of discussion that we would like to have at our next implementation committee meeting. I did that following the initial presentation and discussion of this, and we are just waiting for a date for those discussions to start so that we can have both legal counsel there, both program people there, and see how we can operate in a way that respects the spirit of making sure that we don't displace a child that would otherwise be ready for kindergarten by keeping them in preschool, while at the same time having the flexibility to maximize what we could do with quality preschool time for a student.
Great.
Okay. Other comments?
I have a question. And my question is that, so let's say my child, like Terry was saying, turns 3 in October. And generally, and if they wouldn't be eligible for a CPS because of their birthday, but my child is already at New Horizons, and when they turn 3, they go into the preschool already. So what was the protocol for those parents? Is there a difference from your, I guess it would have been a toddler room to your preschool room? Is there a difference in the amount of their parental copay and all of that? Because CPP wasn't helping prior to that. That's where I just want some thoughts. I agree with you. This is the key difference between a private provider and CPS, and I'm all for it. I just wanted to know what was prior to us deciding this, what did your parents do if they had that October, November, December, even January birthday? And I know you have to move them up. I've been in private care before. I've taught in private care before, so I know you have to move them up. And what's the difference with fees? So I guess that's my question.
Okay, if they were a private pay parent, then they would have to go on and pay that amount that they were paying their fee, their regular fee. But if they were a parent that had PFCC, they had a voucher, then we have early childhood education there through CAA that would supplement their pay, so they would not have to pay a copay. So if this parent, because we're in COVID now, has not lost their job, but they are an essential worker, they have to go out there and they're a single parent. Now, because their child's birthday is October 2nd, now they have to pay that copay. And we're trying to help them and say, oh, okay, well, let's apply for Cincinnati Preschool Promise. But because of that birthday being 3 days off, they can't get the help. And that's my thing. But if they were private pay, yes, they would have to go in and pay that. But
yeah, my question is it the same fee from, are they paying the same amount from the toddler or whatever transition room to preschool? And I'm also talking about this because I think that we are helping more so people that have support through ODJFS than we are private pay. And that's my question is there a big difference that from their pay, from what they were paying, because we aren't helping them while they're in the toddler room because they aren't 3 yet, to when they turn 3? Is there a big difference if we didn't help them?
No, because ODJFS is based on the family. It's not necessarily based on, their fee is based on the family. It's not based on what we charge. If they were private pay, yes, it would go down. Their fee would go down approximately $25.
Okay.
But if the vouchers is based on the family, no matter how old the child is.
Okay. Okay. That was my clarification. That's all I needed to know.
Okay.
Other comments?
I guess I have a question in terms of the timeline for getting to resolution. So I heard Shara say that there's a meeting, the implementation meeting, there'll be a discussion about this. I'm sure parents are already facing this issue. What are the steps to what do we need to do to get it resolved? And how many gating points do we have before we can get it resolved?
And go ahead, Shar, you start.
No, go ahead, Jake. You can talk about how we've worked through this process in the past.
It's the $1 million question. I mean, obviously, TPS has a lot on their plate. So, response times are going to be a bit delayed. I think we expect that. Unlike other situations, I'm cautiously optimistic that this can get done fairly quickly because it's more of a legal clarification on their side as opposed to some big substantive thing that we're asking them to approve at various board levels. I really think that the people driving the bus on the side of CPS will be, well, primarily their legal counsel. And if he can get on board with what we're trying to do and he can say, here's how we can navigate this situation and CPS can be protected and we can do it, then I don't even think that we need to send any documents their way for approval. It's just more of, hey, we're running this by you. Let us know if you see any kinks that could throw you into some trouble because we don't tend to do that. So procedurally, it is my hope and I think my expectation that this will go significantly faster than other implementation type committees that we've done in the past. And then finally, I think that as these issues come up, Shar and I are just poised to take them on a case-by-case basis. And it's not the most efficient thing in the world, but I think in this case it's warranted because we're gonna just try to do what's best for the students and their families. And in the meantime, between now and getting resolution, we'll deal with those as we can in the best way that we can. But I am hopeful that we'll get this thing done fairly quickly, and Char's already started that process. So thankfully we've got the wheels turning.
And I think once we've had the conversation as a good partner, it's very easy for us to flip the switch and implement, to change the dates, to share that with providers, and to update the system. That is no more than a 5-day process, if the most, to make sure that everybody understands and is briefed about that age eligibility or their questions.
Jacob, when you do case to case, can you keep your consistency to a point that we don't incur liability because we turn down someone, accepted somebody else because it's case to case?
Yeah, we're going to have a good reason for deviating from our typical. I mean, I think our go-to is going to be, look, this is the rule and we're going to follow that. And the case to case is really those that fall just outside of the fringe, but have a good reason. Not to say that others don't, but I mean that the situations where I think that we're in a bigger comfort zone for that and avoiding liability would be things like a student that was held back for some reason, or a student that is not a student that otherwise is eligible for kindergarten, but either the parents or because of some, I would say, assessment that the child undertook, indicated that the child should be held back. Those are the situations where I can see exceptions could be made for the betterment of the child. But otherwise, we're going to try to stay so consistent within those parameters that you're right. We will keep liability as a primary concern.
Okay. Other questions or comments?
Do we have an idea, and I'm probably overthinking this, but do we have an idea how many kids might be falling in that category or either category where they might be cut off? Or is that too big of a number? Is that too big of a challenge to try to get our arms around at this point?
So it's not too big of a challenge because we have a denial base. Well, two things. We have a denial basis where we can tell you why a student was denied based on age eligibility of being too young or too old, and we can get you that information. As I mentioned, when we look at what the data has been for this year, we had 52 kids that were too young and 27 children that were too old. We can go back and try to pull those to tell you whether they were months too old or days too old, right? But we also know there's a group that we don't capture, as Ms. Terry said. When a provider understands and reads the regulations, they won't even submit an application. So we don't know the number that may have been interested, that we may have assisted, that we captured. We haven't captured because the rules and the regulations are laid out in the way that they are. So we can tell you what that number may be based on the, 79 age denials that we've had. But we wouldn't be able to capture in an efficient way from providers how many they may have had that they didn't even move forward with.
Right. Okay.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay. You got year 4. Okay. I guess we'll go to the committee reports. No, you get year 4 evaluation up there. I'm sorry. Chara?
Would you like us to start, Shari?
Yes, we have our innovations team here, Dr. Mitchell and Dr. Hindert, to give us an update. And as usual, innovations continues to be such a strong partner for us with our monthly meetings and our updates, as well as giving us some time to help us figure out our most challenging questions on what our preschool population looks like. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Monica Mitchell to give us an update on the year 4 evaluation.
Yes, so as much as I would love to go into a lot of detail, I've been advised that you have a packed agenda and I should keep this very brief, meaning 5 to 10 minutes. So I will keep this very high level and it is really focused on the expanded components of the evaluation rather than on the entire evaluation itself. But at the end, I'd love to take any questions that anyone may have on whatever components of the evaluation that people would like to hear about. So as you recall, in the year 4 evaluation, Innovations proposed to expand the evaluation in a number of ways, and you can see those ways that are listed here. And high level means that we are on track with the evaluation. And I will just highlight some of the exciting components of the evaluation and some of the things that we're learning already. So, the kindergarten readiness assessment is one of the ways that we've had to be adaptable during COVID. The KRA, which has been given either in the crawl format or in the KRA format since 2004, was not given this year. We work with CPS, and I know Vera's on the call, so thank you, Vera, for our collaboration to use a proxy measure called the DIBELS, which gives the same kind of outcomes, gives the on-track, not on track measure. It also gives us the bands. And we have received that data from the district, and we have actually done some preliminary analysis on that measure. I don't have anything to report. It's just honestly just looking at the integrity of the data, making sure we have the data that we will be able to report. So that's high level. What we propose to do in the expanded evaluation, though, is to be able to begin to get data on the QI centers, meaning children who are in STAR quality 1 and 2 centers, which will be very exciting. And to do that, we actually are having to coordinate a whole different consent process. So all that are things that we've been able to put in place already. in addition to beginning to set up the analysis for reporting this year. So that's one highlight. Another highlight is that we're also just doing some preliminary analysis on students, preschoolers who were in the expanded learning programs, and being able to start to accrue those measures and correlate that with kindergarten readiness outcomes. So that was one of the other proposed measures. And the Ready Rosie program is, we know that this year we will be able to get some very high level measures, meaning number of students who are enrolled, usage, views, and we will be able to build on that over time, meaning, you know, what are some of the impact measures that we will be able to look at from that program. Also, believe it or not, between the evaluation that we did last year and the expanded evaluation, we are doing 18 different focus groups, either provider or parent or teacher focus groups. We've been recruiting for those. I think the first one I believe starts next week. We have filled up some of the focus groups, but we actually are very confident that all those focus groups are going to go well. We have one of the exciting ways that we are expanding the methodology is actually looking at parents and centers that are not engaged in CPP at all, so that we can learn the perspectives of stakeholders that we can increase our reach to. So we're calling those groups, I think, the potential target group. And that's one of the ways that we know that we can increase our learning and improve our communications. And let me just give one more highlight. So the wage study is something that everyone was very excited about. We've done some of the benchmark analysis for that. We'll also get information for that from some of our focus groups, and we're also working with metrics to get additional data for that as well. So, and I'm going to hand it over to Kalana, who is going to talk about one of the other exciting additions to this year's evaluation.
Yeah, so we are actually also meeting with a group on a monthly basis. We're calling it the CPP Evaluation Advisory Panel. And this is a group comprised of community members and then also 2 consultants. So we have 2 providers, 2 teachers, and 2 parents in the group. Then we also have Dr. Jennifer Williams. She's now associated with Scale Strategic Solutions. She used to have her own consulting business. And then also Crystal Kendrick of Voice of Your Customer. So Crystal and Jennifer actually are lending some additional support to us. In addition to being on the panel, Crystal is helping us with some advertising, some communications and marketing to our stakeholder groups. And then Dr. Williams is giving us some more detailed feedback on our survey items and focus groups. But the entire group meets monthly. We had our first meeting in January of 2021. And it's been really, really great, productive. We've gotten input on surveys, recruitment, marketing. We've gotten feedback on our evaluation strategy. And everyone is just really great at offering their perspectives from their stakeholder group. So we have a really well-rounded set of feedback. And we are going to continue having these meetings for the duration of the contract every month. We kind of have a different topic just based on what's going on in the evaluation at that time.
So willing to open it up for questions, and certainly would like to come back and talk more about the sausage making at some other time when there's more time available. So any questions?
I think great progress has been made the last year with innovations and being able to tell our story. I have 2 quick questions. What's the next steps in terms of being at the 100 percentile mark and having an evaluation report? We've got a May meeting, a June meeting, and then we drop down to August as a board.
Yeah, thanks, Debbie. So over the next 4 to 6 weeks, it'll be a lot of data collection from our surveys. One of our surveys launches, Claudia tells me, on Monday, if not more than one. I know next week is a big time for survey launching, and our focus groups will be happening in the month of April. So we will be accruing a lot of data. We already have the data to do the KRA analysis. So April data collection, May and June, compiling the report. And last year we had a draft of the report, which is, I believe, required internally in June. And per our contract, we have to have a final version of the report by July.
The other question I have is looking forward, and this is not a innovations question, it's a CPP question. I assume after year 4, there will be a year 5 evaluation. And what are the plans for that from the standpoint of RFPs, timeline, etc.? So I would probably direct that toward Shara.
The recommendation was that an RFP be done for year 5 evaluation. That was the recommendation when this contract was executed. As you know, that will be a challenge to run that RFP before we get the final results of this, to know what are the next things that we need to research and continue to look on. So I will have an update for that for the executive committee on what the prospects look for that RFP and a timeline for that in April.
Thank you.
Any other questions for us?
Any other question?
I had a question about the contract period. When is the end of the contract period?
So most of the deliverables will be completed in July. We do have another deliverable. I think it ends in August, to be honest with you. So by August, we'll be working with the district to accrue to do the data requests for next year's KRA, because all of our data requests are due into the district for the next year in August for all of our contracts. So that's a part of it.
Great, thank you. And one other question was, when you have the surveys, when you're putting the surveys out for the parents, how are the surveys delivered to the parents? Is it digital? Is it on paper? Or?
We work with providers. So providers are a key partner of ours. We actually work with CPP as well, who have direct relationships with the providers. We work with 4C. Last year, 4C was a critical partner to get providers into our provider focus groups. Voice of your customer is now a really important partner for us, especially when we're talking about what we're calling our target or potential community, where some parents, we're looking for parents who don't even have their kids enrolled in preschool, or providers. One of our focus groups is really interesting, which is former preschool teachers who have left the profession. We want to learn from them. Why did you leave the profession? So we have multiple ways to get the surveys back, either in a hard copy or an electronic format.
And also, I'll make a comment on that. When we put out our advertisements for those surveys, parents can access them through their phone. So we put a QR code right on the flyer. So all they have to do is scan it, takes them right to the survey. We know we're in a very mobile world, so we're sensitive to that. There's also a link where they can complete it online. So we try to be really flexible and meet everyone's needs.
Yeah, last year, even during COVID, we over-recruited for our surveys, and we're running ahead of schedule for some of our focus groups now in terms of over-recruiting.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I had some clarity in response to your question, Ms. Terry, about the contract. We have a master level service agreement with Innovations that we update yearly with the scope of work for that year. But there are provisions in that contract, because I know the details because we just executed it, that allow them to also, and their willingness to continue until the scope of work is completed. So even though our contract terms are hard in August to get our deliverables, Innovations has been gracious enough to say completion of the project also means presentation for the special events we have planned to roll out the year 4 results and the report, and that will occur in September. The reports that initially will come out in July, as many of you know, are compliant with the master agreement that requires us to have a quantitative report out by July 15th that we share with CPS. And so that will be our first benchmark report deliverable of those quantitative results from year 4 performance, academic year.
Additional comments or questions? Monica, thank you very much. We look forward to our next meeting.
Thank you very much.
Okay, committee reports. Executive committee. Shar, is that you?
Nope, I think that would be you, Dr. Owens. Anything to report from the executive committee?
No, I think the main thing we have from the executive committee was we've already presented to the board.
Okay, good.
So we're okay. Governance.
Okay, we have a couple of things to report to the board. We, at our last meeting, reviewed committee charters, and we are going to be presenting all of the final charters to the board on May 18th. I believe that's the timeline that we agreed to. One of the things that we want to be sure that each committee knows is that per discussions with Jacob, we will be adding a sentence at the very end that says that the authorities given to the committees do not supersede the master agreement or any of the governance principles. So that's going to be, if you will, an umbrella sentence that goes into all of them. We've also asked, and I think that each committee use a rubric, and even though the work of the committees is different, the committees did use that rubric. We have one point of feedback that each committee specify the number of board members that are on the committees, and if there are other members such as community members, etc., that those be designated in the charter. Once the charters are approved by the board in May, we will ask each committee to submit the list of names of individuals on their committees to the board for approval in June, and that will follow our annual process in terms of establishing the charters, but looking each year at the membership and submitting names of members to the board for annual approval. The other thing that we talked extensively about was our own governance, if you will, as a CPP in terms of our education, our self-evaluation. Some of us benefited almost 3 years ago from what we call the retreat. And we were newbies then. It was over at the Red Cross. There was lots of good discussions. We had a good facilitator from Mayerson. And so we're looking at, again, very important self-evaluation and doing a retreat. So at our next meeting, the governance committee is going to look at the data that, even though it's old, that came out of that last retreat, look at proposing to the board some parameters for self-evaluation and another retreat, and also look at potential facilitators for such a retreat. And we are probably looking at late summer for that retreat. We also had the benefit of an early announcement, if you will, from Papa Cameras, who was not able to be with us at our last meeting. So we spent a couple of early moments of joy celebrating Cameras number 3, if you will. So we had a great meeting, and we're looking forward to our next meeting, which is April 22nd.
Okay. Questions or comments? Okay, Community Engagement Committee. Bishop Tate, are you here?
He is not, he's on vacation, so this is Bianca.
Okay.
Just a quick overview, we had to cancel this month's meeting. We are scheduling for April. Last month, some of the things that we discussed were just some of the places that we need to develop some outreach. What are communities that we're maybe missing? What are some communities that we're already in, and how do we better tap into those? Who is also missing from the table around community engagement? Are there any parents that we need to be bringing on, or business and community members that we are missing? And Lakisa, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm pretty sure that's the biggest overview from that meeting.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Well, look forward to those developments. Cost of quality.
Hello, Gary asked me to report in his absence. So the Cost of Quality Committee did meet, and we provided an update on teacher promise grants. At our current snapshot of our retention rate is about 85%. Our staff support fund, as we reported, is increasing, that we now have 27 applicants. We also moved forward with doing a quarterly kind of pull on wage data from providers to supplement the work that Innovations is doing, and so that we kind of have a snapshot of where we are. And these are the preliminary results that show for lead teachers at tuition assistance and quality improvement sites, what percentage are at or above the $15 an hour. And you can see that for overall at 56%, but tuition assistance is definitely higher with teachers at or above that level than our quality improvement. And so our goal is to help our quality improvement sites also reach that goal. What we know is for tuition assistance in some ways also signifies to us 3 to 5 stars in high quality. And I think you will see not only with CPP, but across the system for childcare providers and preschools, those higher star ratings correspond to higher tuition assistance reimbursement rates for PFCC and higher investments from a lot of sources that enable them to provide better wages. You'll also see a snapshot on the other side that shows the average wage and salaries from the 91 data points providers that we collected on educational attainment, wages, and how that equates to salary. That's just a snapshot of an ongoing thing that you'll see that Innovations will do. And Kenitra, I think, has done a wonderful job of collecting that from the data we have, bringing it together, sharing not only with the Cost of Quality Committee, but the Workforce Development Committee that has really been charged with monitoring and pushing where we are on teacher retention, teacher recruitment, teacher education, as well as wage parity. Our next data pull will come in April, so we'll have some updates for the Cost of Quality Committee from there as well. On the next slide, you'll also see that we have finally gotten our report from Crane on the outcome of teacher promise grants for the pilot year. This is the 2-page project evaluation kind of summary that we'll be pushing out in the public and the learnings from that. Nothing surprising. You know, much of what we saw from Innovations qualitative report and what they shared with us that teachers were saying. Our next steps, some of those we've already implemented in raising the amount of the teacher promise grant to have a greater impact, as well as streamlining how we communicate with teachers and offering something comparable for quality improvement and providers on the staff support fund. So that is the snapshot that we distributed to everyone. What you'll see on the next few slides is the long version of the report that goes a little bit deeper on those qualitative points that really tell us, only with the initiation of the pilot program, what teachers thought, how they felt about it, but also the impact of COVID, down to anything on whether or not this was beneficial to you. Did it help you stay on your job? Why was it important to you and your family? And what do you think we can do as an entity and system change to bring about better wages and wage parity? So that full report, I will say, after 2 years from Crane, finally gives us a snapshot analysis of where we are with teacher promise grant pilots. We also did, when we met with Cost of Quality Committee, as well as the Data and Evaluation Committee, identified some new areas that we need to look in deeper for teacher promise grants and their impact, and those have been incorporated in the evaluation that Innovations will do, that they'll be sharing with us for the year 4 report.
Okay, it's a lot in that. Any comments or questions?
I would just comment, I think the information here is fantastic. I don't recall seeing anything like this in the past, and I think it's just really, really important. I applaud you for gathering this, putting this together, and I think this is something we can really use. Thank you.
Great.
I just want to add also kudos on the data from the 91 people. That's great to begin to have that data. I think our other data was so old. So yay, how can we measure improvement if we don't have some baseline? So good work.
Yes, I agree. Okay, comments from our reservers. Is Landsman still here? Vera?
Yes, I'm here, Dr. Owens. Is it all right if I just give a couple of just updates on CPS so your board is aware of everything? I know
Sure.
Shara is, but I want to make sure all are. First, I'm very pleased on the direction of facilitator Sarah Gret that the Workforce Development Council approved 4C's proposal to provide training and other services to private providers and also CPS teachers. So we're very pleased with that. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to Laura and she can give you more details on that. Also, I've shared with Shara that we will be, to complete our strategic plan of 2,200 seats, we will be opening up a classroom at Vine, Rising Stars at Vine, and another one at Mount Washington. And then that will complete our current strategic plan with the district. I would want to say we are excited about summer. We will be holding summer scholars. Our funding sources will be varied, but we are very excited. Our theme that we are preparing curriculum to share with Shara, so she may share out with providers, is aligned to the kindergarten and first grade theme. It will be music around the world. So we are looking forward to sharing lessons with a focus on language and literacy, vocabulary and background knowledge that also incorporates math, science, social studies, along with the arts. And along with that, we'll also be providing some Mission to Move videos. The fire department has graciously volunteered to take us on some field trips, along with some social emotional learning lessons that individuals can incorporate into their programming. The other announcement is I would like to give kudos and shout out to Brittany and Lakeisha. We thoroughly appreciate both of them that led 3 of us, myself and my 2 lead teachers, through our very first Facebook Live on kindergarten transition. It definitely is a different experience, but they were awesome professionals and helped us sound like we really knew what we were talking about. So thank you, Brittany and Lakeisha. Also, if you could help us spread the word, we had a kindergarten push. We are continuing. We are still enrolling for kindergarten, and we've had several private providers reach out to us, which has been great, that we've been able to talk with their teachers or their director to help them find the website, or call the number 363-0123 or 363-0017, and we can direct them to the right schools for their parents. We really do want to get the kindergartners enrolled now, so that when next year begins, they will have their transportation and their other services in place regarding lunches and things like that. And the last announcement is we will be going to 5 days a week beginning March 31st. So on that, you guys have had an awesome meeting. Very impressed with everything you're doing. Kudos. And I hope everyone has a nice evening.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Any comments from the board about our observers' comments? Okay. Do we have any observers present? Hearing none, I will then accept the motion for adjournment.
I motion to adjourn, Laura.
I'm sorry, that's your job. I'm sorry, I forgot. I'm a newbie. Who would like to be our perennial second for adjournment?
Second.
Okay, Marcia. All those in favor, leave the meeting.
Aye.
Those who want to stay can stay. All right, thank you. Motion passed. Thank you, guys. Good meeting.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone.